Well, good morning and welcome to our Monday Bible study. We're in a different space today, and not only are we in a different space, but because some of our friends couldn't be with us in person today, we decided we would take a little break from the Gospel of Mark and look into the book of Ecclesiastes as kind of just a break today. One of the things I asked our group here to be thinking about, and for you online as you're listening to this, is to think about when in life do you take things maybe too serious? And then when in life do you find yourself not enjoying the pleasures of life? What is happening in your life that causes you to do that? And as we come to the book of Ecclesiastes, we'll be listening to some wisdom and figure out maybe some ways that we can kind of, at times, not take things so serious. And then also look for ways that we can enjoy life even when things maybe aren't always easy. So, as we start today, one of the questions I have for y'all is, when you think about the book of Ecclesiastes, what comes to your mind?
Life is futile.
Life is futile. Oh my, that's...
Especially without God.
Especially without God. So life can be hard, difficult, can be all those things in between. What are some other things when you think about the book of Ecclesiastes?
That's really the meaning of life, almost, isn't it?
What the meaning of life is maybe is found in Ecclesiastes. So Ecclesiastes offers some things about maybe how to deal with things in life. Maybe gives us a little bit of insight. What are some other things when you think about the book of Ecclesiastes? Are there any phrases or parts of it that are memorable to you?
When you try everything.
Try everything, yeah.
And then when you try everything, do you tie a knot and start all over again?
Yeah. So what we'll do today is just kind of skim Ecclesiastes. And one of the things I want you to hear is that this book offers observational theology and observational practical ways of just thinking about life. And even though it was written millennia ago, when we read it today, it's just as fresh if we think about it. Because it's a kind of, it's one of the books in the Bible that is so different than the rest. Because it is focused on just the way we live. And how difficult it can be at times. And how good it can be at times. And how we kind of frustrate ourselves with trying to figure out why things happen. And when we do, sometimes it doesn't necessarily give us any more joy. So I'm going to read from a different translation than you probably have. I know it is because it's different than the one I have. This one is by Norbert Lofink. He wrote a commentary on Ecclesiastes. And the term Ecclesiastes comes from the Hebrew Koheleth. So anytime you see teacher or anything in there, that comes from Koheleth, means teacher, and Ecclesiastes is the Greek term for that, and we just carry over Ecclesiastes. Nobody just regularly goes around and says the word Ecclesiastes to that. That's a Greek term from the Septuagint, the Greek translation of this book. But it just means teacher. Koheleth means teacher, some translate it preacher, but in the text, it often goes back, it'll start kind of giving the image of somebody like a Solomon, but instead of referring to Solomon throughout the text, it refers to teacher rather than king. But it's probably written under or with Solomon's kind of imagery embedded with it. So I'm going to read this translation, and as I do, I'm going to stop and ask you what your translation sounds like. Okay? So, the words of Koheleth, the son of David, who was king in Jerusalem. Now this is where it's going to be different from y'all's. A breath, a puff of breath, a breath, a puff of breath. Koheleth used to say, and they are all a breath. So what does verse 2, how does it translate for you?
Meaningless.
Okay, who has meaningless? Okay, read verse 2. Somebody, you read verse 2.
Meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless.
Okay. Who has a different translation? Okay.
Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity.
Okay. Anybody else? So most of them have either meaningless or vanity of vanity. Okay. Boy, that's a kind of a rough kind of start to a text, isn't it? So if we go meaningless, it's kind of
Depressing.
it's depressing. I would say that's probably not necessarily a good translation. Okay? Vanity of vanity. Life is, when you think of the word vanity, what do you think of? The English translation for that. Because we got to remember, they're translating from Hebrew. So they're trying to find a word that gives us an idea of what the term means. Pride. You know, when we think of somebody who's vain, they have ego, but kind of part of that is life is fleeting. You know, vanity doesn't always stay. You know, so the term in Hebrew that is usually translated those can also mean that, a puff of breath. So I want you to think about, if we translate a breath, a puff of breath, a breath, a puff of breath, Koheleth used to say, they are all a breath. When you think of breath, how long does it last? Yeah. Life is like a puff of breath in that what? It comes and it goes. In the scheme of things, all that we experience is what? Is short. This is kind of what the Hebrew deep down is trying to say to us. So when we hear vanity, vanity is meaningless. I have a harder time with that one. You know, that one breath keeps me alive. I mean, I have to have it. You know, if I don't breathe this breath, I'm probably not going to breathe any more breaths. But life is just kind of, it's very short. It comes and it goes. And the reality is, just because my breath is gone doesn't mean the world what? It doesn't stop. You know, sometimes we think that, well, there are certain people that have egos that think the world exists for them. And that when they're gone, everybody's just going to, it's just going to stop. It's going to stop spinning and everything's going to. So the beginning of Koheleth begins with this awareness that life is short. Not only is it short, but it's like a puff of breath. And then, verse 3 says, what does one draw from all the possessions for which one labors under the sun? So if life is short, and you spend your whole life trying to accumulate, what does it gain you? So we begin with the question, life is short, what does it gain you to accumulate things? And then we transition to kind of a cosmology, an overview of God's creation. So listen to, he poses the question, and now he sets the stage for what life is. Where is life lived in? This short life, where does it live in? A generation passes, another comes. The earth stays in eternity. The sun which rose and then set, breathless in its race, back to the place where it rises again. Southward blowing and turning to the north, turning blows the air. And because it turns, the air returns. All the streams flow to the sea, and the sea does not feel to the place whence the stream flows. They return to flow again. So we see, starting in this kind of this awareness of the world, is that everything what? Kind of comes and goes. It's kind of cyclical in its what? In its world. The streams flow to the ocean or the sea, but it never feels. The wind blows and what? It comes around again. Just this kind of an awareness of creation is that it is constantly moving back and forth. All things are constantly restless. More than humans can express. The eye is not stated by observing. The ear is not filled by hearing. Everything you see and everything you hear doesn't fill you up, does it? You constantly are what? Wanting to see and to know and experience what? More. I mean, we think about that each and every day. Every day we want to what? Experience food. We can't eat and be full for the rest of our lives. You know, when one question is answered in life, you think about children asking questions. There's always another question. We think about human scientific developments over the last 100 years. Once you find out one thing, they find out something else and something else. There's just more and more. There's never enough for us. Now listen to this. Whatever has occurred, that will occur again. What is being carried out, that will be carried out again. Think about how every generation kind of follows a similar pattern. Every person follows a similar pattern. We grow up, we think that, when we're young, we think about all the things that we're going to experience in life. You get to the later years and you think, well, I didn't get to experience everything I'd wanted to. One generation rebels against the former generation. And then the older generation says, when I was your age, I was doing the same thing, but we were doing it better than you. And then the next generation will say that, and then the next generation. It's kind of just this cycle. Our history over the last couple of hundred years has been different because of technological advances, but when we think about ancient history, up until the late 1700s, early 1800s, everybody was kind of living the same life. They were using pretty much the same kind of ideas and tools. They were still using horses and buggies. They were still having to do everything manually. There wasn't computers or industry that kind of did stuff. Thomas Jefferson made the observation, hearing in the old world about the railroads and the industry, saying that they will come to the United States, and once they did, life would finally be different than it was 2,000 years ago. He could see that, kind of the way that we did things hadn't really changed since the Romans. We still built roads the same way, we still had to do things the same way, but the Industrial Revolution changed. So our world's different than the ancient world up until a couple hundred years ago. But even still, we're still doing the same things. We may just be using different tools. As time something happens about which they say, observe that, this is new. But it's already occurred in the eternities that have gone before us. Somebody's always saying, this is a new way of doing something. Well, a lot of times it's just being recycled from a previous generation.
Like my clothes, I wish I'd saved my clothes from the 70s. I could wear them now.
Yeah, we even think about just styles. Yeah, styles come and go, but then they come back.
And the kids look at them and go, oh, look at this. Have you seen this? And I'm
Yeah.
going, yeah, I saw that years ago.
Well, even your shoes are just about.
Yeah. There is no memory of the former ones, and the future ones still yet to come. There will also be no memory of them among those who will come after them. I want you to think about living in a world where, for the most part, even today, we don't have to go back thousands of years, even today, unless you've done something really, really great or really, really bad, after about 2 generations, nobody remembers who you are. I want you to think about, do you know your great-great-grandparents? Some of you, if you do genealogy, may know their name. Who's going to know you in 2 generations past? Now, one good thing is we've got pictures of us that we didn't have then. But at some point, we're not going to be remembered. And that's hard for us to realize. That is humbling to think about. To know that our great-great-grandparents, we don't know what their dreams were, their hopes were, their fears or anxieties were. And to put ourselves in the position to think, because a lot of times we think that even myself, we're more important than we really are. But just think about, of all of human history, how many people do we really know about? Just a handful. And it's the ones that have done really great things or really terrible things. And honestly, it's probably easier to do a terrible thing and get remembered for than it is a good thing. Let's just be honest. The lists of infamous people are more thought of sometimes than the ones that have done the really great things. So even think about some of the presidents in our country's history. There are people we don't remember. You know, how many of y'all go around talking about Polk? President Polk? No. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a handful of them. You know, there's not a whole lot of us that go talking about Van Buren or any of those. I mean, there's a list of people that were important people in their day that we just don't. Our generation it's a memory that has faded. You know, there are events that have happened that have been important events that we kind of know about in history if we read a textbook, but it's not something that we carry around with us. But for that generation, that was the most important event in history. When I think about Lily's kids and grandkids, are they going to remember this season of COVID or all the craziness that's happened in our generation? It might be in a textbook, but they're not going to, I mean, they may experience something similar, but it's not going to be like, you know, as much as important it is to us. So one of the things that Koheleth does is this teacher begins with, let's set the stage and just say what's real. You know, this isn't something we necessarily want to do on Sunday mornings when people show up, but just humble yourself and understand to begin with that life is short. And some of the things we work towards, we think are important. Maybe the translation is, it's meaningless in the scheme of things. Not necessarily to you. And that's okay. So what are you going to do with this short life that no one maybe will remember you for in generations to come? Your children will, your grandchildren, maybe your great-grandchildren. But past that, I mean, I'm thinking of my grandparents, my great-grandparents. I don't have any pictures of them in my home. I've got pictures of my grandparents. You know, they're important people. I know stories about them, and I'll try to tell some to my daughter, but she's not going to remember them. She might remember my grandparents, but she's only known one of them really in her lifetime. But she just passed away a year and a half ago. She's not going to remember from here on out. So I've got to tell those stories for her to remember. But I know she's probably not going to tell those stories to her children. She'll talk about her grandparents. So it's just an awareness. I don't want to, it's not a Debbie Downer. I don't want to be the person you leave here and be like, oh man, Jeremiah, I was feeling so good. It's a beautiful day.
I'm glad we didn't have this in grief share.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't bring that to grief share. I am Koheleth, the king of Israel in Jerusalem. I made up my mind to examine, to explore with the help of knowledge whether all that is carried out under the heavens is really a bad business in which humankind is forced to be involved, or at God's command. I observed all the actions that are carried out under the sun, and the conclusion is all are a breath, an inspiration of air. Yours probably goes back to your other translation.
Where are you?
Oh, I know y'all's translations are. This is verse 14. So, and if you just want to listen and go back and read your translation, that's fine. But the conclusion is all is but a breath, an inspiration of air. Another translation, all I saw the deeds that are under the sun, and see all is vanity and chasing after the wind. So just think about, I've examined all of life, he's saying. And everything I've examined, the reality is, it's like somebody trying to take hold of something that's unattainable. Well, we think about people in our day, chasing after things that they can't what? They can't get a hold of. I'm reading a book now, and it's called Seculosity, and it's written by a Christian writer who has asked the question, people aren't going to church as much as they used to. Let's just be honest, they're not. And people aren't necessarily, whether they're Christian or non-Christian, thinking of themselves as people of faith. Where did their religion go? And he says it's gone to certain things in culture, like he's got a chapter on people going after being a parent has become their religion. You know, people that do everything for their kids, and you know, the people that are making their kids do everything, hoping that did give them meaning and purpose. Or the people that maybe it's their food. So you see people that have concentrated their attention on food. You know, it's just, some of it is to the point where it is, if I eat the right foods and I'm healthy, that's my identity. Or I want to just experience all the foods. You know, think about the food channels that we have. I mean, you're eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich while you're watching somebody on cooking a 4-course meal. I mean, you think about it, that's kind of crazy that we sit around and watch something we can't even touch or smell on TV, and yet we do it over and over again. I do it too. I love the Food Network and the Travel Channel. The Travel Channel kind of does some crazy stuff with like haunted houses. I don't see that. I don't see somebody going around some country I've never been to, eating stuff I'll probably never taste, and describing it to me. I don't know why I enjoy that, but I do. But it doesn't fill me up. I'm still hungry. You know, there's one on exercise. You know, he's got a chapter of people that just, exercise becomes their thing. Another one on work. Work becomes people's religion. They try to find meaning and purpose. And when we look at culture, there are people always trying to find something that's going to make them what? Feel complete or whole. And once they get it, it kind of vanishes and they try to reach out farther and farther and farther. And Kohel is saying this has happened in this day. I mean, it happens in our world too. And it's not just non-Christians. Christians do the same thing. We think this next thing will be the thing that makes us whole. And we still feel what? Sometimes we still feel empty inside. So it's like chasing wind. What is bent cannot be straightened. What is not there cannot be counted. I thought to myself as follows, look, I have increased and expanded my knowledge so that now I have surpassed anyone who has ever ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have often been able to observe knowledge and perception. So I took it upon myself to perceive what knowledge really is and to perceive what delusion and ignorance really are. I perceive that this is also a spirit of error, for much knowledge equals much vexation. Deeper perception equals deeper pain. So I want you to think about this. Who's more happy in life sometimes? The people that are fully aware of everything going on all the time, or the people that are just kind of living ignorantly and naively? Yeah, ignorant, naive people seem to be happier, don't they? I hate to say that, but it's true. The more you learn about the world and what the world's like, the more you see things that you can't unsee. The more you see injustice, the more you see not everybody does things the right way. You start to see kind of the cracks in the world. And when you see that, it's kind of what? You can't unsee it. And the deeper you go into those things, the more you begin to see. And what he's saying is that even though I have looked into all of these things, knowledge in and of itself doesn't make me feel happier or more joyful or more complete. So it's not just stuff that maybe we think will make us happier, but we think, if we could know everything about everything. We got the internet now. If we want to know pretty much anything, if we can decipher what's real and not real, that's the hard part. But if we could know everything about everything, would that make us any better off? No. Because if we're aware, even if we tried to go to those things, at the end point, there's never enough answers. There's always another question, another why. So it becomes in itself chasing air. That experiment in of itself. I said to myself, go ahead, try being joyful, taste happiness. The conclusion is that is a breath. About laughter, I said, what nonsense. About joy, what good is it? I drove myself to exploration in order to bathe my body in wine, and I kept my mind leading my knowledge to pasture in order to imprison ignorance until I might observe what kind of happiness humans can bring about under the heavens during the few days of their lives. I expanded my action. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards for myself. I set out gardens and parks for myself. In them I planted all sorts of trees. I arranged overflowing ponds as to water the stands of sprouting trees. I bought male and female slaves, although I had already owned houses of slaves. I owned a large number of animals and cattle and sheep and goats, more than all those who preceded me in Jerusalem. I collected silver and gold for myself as well, and in all my personal possessions, kings and provinces, I procured singers, male and female, trained for me, and in what a man desires, a large harem. I was already great, and I increased even more, so that I surpassed all those who preceded me in Jerusalem. Moreover, my knowledge remained with me, and whatever my eyes desired, I did not withhold from me. I did not have to deny my heart any joy, for my heart could draw joy from all my possessions, and that was my portion out of all my possessions. And I reflected on all the actions my hand had carried out, on all those possessions that I had labored to possess. The conclusion, they are all a breath, an inspiration of air. There is no profit under the sun. So I want you to think about, the idea here is if someone could create their own world. Just think about in the ancient world, if you could recreate the world around you. If I could build the houses I wanted to live in, if I could transform the world around me to be the ponds and the trees. So we think about someone who is building a world for themselves, and they do it. Not only do they do it, they populate it with anything they can imagine. They populate it with singers. They populate it with entertainment. So think about our world, how much entertainment we have. They populate it with people that will serve them. They don't have to do anything for themselves. They can sit and relax. Not only do they populate it with singers, they populate it with anything, any kind of desire they have a harem to do it for them. They have lots of ladies. There is nothing in their life that they've not met that need for.
Jeremiah, I have an example.
Okay.
My sister-in-law had never married, and when she died and we went to her house, this one room had sacks of stuff that she had bought. You couldn't find any floor space that there wasn't.
Yeah.
She just went out and bought it up, set it in her.
Yeah.
We made thousands of dollars on the garage sale.
Yeah. But she didn't even use it.
No.
Yeah.
She just bought it and set it down.
And probably each buy that she bought, this thing will make me happy. You know? So all of these things that he has accumulated, he says I can draw joy from them. But the reality is, doesn't matter how much money we have, how many possessions we have, how much things we can recreate the world, those things, at least from Koheleth, is like chasing after wind. You know, I find that in myself. Sometimes I'll buy something, and then a year later, the new thing comes out. And I'm like, man. Or how can I convince Amber that we need to get the new thing? And I'm like, that's a futile discussion in and of itself. Yeah, I mean, you know, oh, that poor family down the road, they sure could use this thing I bought so I can get the new thing. I'm thinking I'll be generous to give away the thing I wanted, now I don't want, so I can get the and then, as soon as I get the new thing, a year later, I want something more. And I have to tell myself, you've got what you need, quit. But that's the way the human heart is. It's never enough. Even in our relationships sometimes, when we have a spouse that we love, there's always a sense of, I just want a little bit more attention. I want a little bit more, you know, don't they appreciate, you know, that happens, doesn't it? Why do people get divorced? Well, there's always this thought, there's somebody out there that could fulfill this need better. That's how affairs start. I mean, I'm just being honest. This is the way the world works. Koheles is just painting a reality picture for us. It's not Pollyannish. It's not a beautiful Thomas Kincaid painting of reality. It's reality. So we see all of these things going on, and he reflects on them, and he just observes there's no profit under the sun. I've reflected by observing what knowledge and what delusion and ignorance there really are. Moreover, what kind of human will succeed the king when they had earlier established. I observed, yes, a profit comes from knowledge, not from ignorance. Just there's a profit from light rather than darkness. One who knows has eyes in his head, a fool walks in darkness. But I perceived me too, for the one, the same fate awaits each one. So I thought to myself, the fate awaits the fool also awaits me. Why then have I gathered knowledge beyond measure? And I said to myself, this too is a breath. So the reality is, for the person that is trying to figure out the world and reality and what makes everything tick, guess what? They're going to die just like the person that never had a thought in their head and was probably completely happy. At the end of the day, Koheleth is coming out of a Old Testament perspective that's not going to necessarily talk about life after death. But in this life, he says, at the end of the day, everybody meets the same end, which is death. And he'll go on to talk about the rich and the poor. Guess what? They're both going to die. The smart and the wise and the foolish and the ignorant. At the end of the day, boy, that's...
Depressing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, somebody, that's... Yeah, it can be. So what we'll see is kind of a layer of reality, and then the question is, what do we do with it?
Makes you wonder why.
Well, yeah and no. I mean, we got to understand this is one voice in the Old Testament and one voice in the biblical narrative. But sometimes this voice kind of, it's, for all of us kind of that aren't always like smiling all the time, we can come back to this book and say, well, in the biblical narrative, there's somebody else like us. Huh?
We prove it if you read this.
Yeah, but all of us live this out.
I have a question because I don't know what yours says because
Okay,
it's hard to follow, but
what verse are you on?
10,
Verse 10.
after he describes all this, and he says, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor. So that to me was, he was satisfied, he was happy at that time doing all that. It was in the middle of verse 10.
Verse 10.
Yeah.
Is there a thing of which it is said, see this? Oh, see, we're on 2:10. Yeah. Okay.
I got myself nothing.
Somebody read y'all's verse.
Verse 10 is, I denied myself nothing, my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my work. And this was the reward for all of my labor.
Yeah. I'll read this translation and then the one I read from. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was the reward for all my toil. And here it said, and whatever my eyes desired, I did not withhold for them. I did not deny my heart any joy. For my heart could draw joy from all my possessions. And that was my portion out of all of my possessions. So it starts there, and then it said, and then I reflected. So, at the moment, you do find a little bit of joy in some of these things. But they're what? They're fleeting. And then I reflected on all the actions my hand had carried out, on all those possessions that I labored. The conclusion was, they're all a breath, an inspiration of air. There is nothing to profit under the sun. Another translation says, then I considered all my hands had done and the toil I'd spent in doing them, and again all was vanity and chasing after wind. And there was nothing to be gained under the sun. So the reality is, there's a moment of joy. When I eat my really delicious steak, I get a moment of joy. 12 hours later, I'm hungry again. I get the really nice thing I've been wanting to get, I enjoy it until I realize there's something else out there. You know, why do people have addictions?
For the moment.
Yeah, but that first high is, you can never recreate it. And that's kind of the mentality, you know. The person that makes the first million, do they stop making money? No, they want a second million. You know, somebody that makes $1 billion, you think if you get to $1 billion, you'd be okay. Guess what? It's never enough. That's just, the human heart is always wanting more.
And sometimes when an older person dies, and you go and you see all the stuff they had collected, stored in a
Yeah.
garage or in a shack somewhere, not using it, they just,
Yeah.
the fun was getting it.
Fun was getting. And we're going to talk about, Kohelet's going to ask some questions in a minute. What good is it that you've accumulated all this stuff that you weren't necessarily ever going to get to hold on to, and that next generation is going to come in, and all the work you did, they're just going to treat it as...
Tear it down, start over.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's comical in and of itself that we do these things. You know, the house you built by yourself with your hands, next generation is probably going to go, can we sell it? I mean, that's reality.
Yard sales for antiques out there, and they'll say, this belongs to my granddad, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I want $25 for it.
I'm going to go back and read from the NRSV. And what I'll do is when we see vanities or meaningless, we'll go puff of breath, puff of breath. So this one is a good translation because it goes more word for word. And this one does too, but this one is a little easier flow. Maybe it'll follow your translation a little closer. So I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly, for what can one do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. Then I saw the wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness. The wise have eyes in their head, but fools walk in darkness. Yet I consider the fate is the same. So let's move down to verse 18. I hated all my toil in which I had toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to those who come after me. And who knows whether they will be wise or foolish? Yet they will be master of all of which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This is also like a puff of breath. So think about, you know, this person is, whether they're a king or a pauper, whatever they do, everything I have built, everything I have done is going to go to somebody else. And who knows if they will use it wisely or not. You know, let's just think about it in terms of generation. Let's think about this. And y'all are older, so y'all appreciate this more than maybe another generation. But we think about, you know, the greatest generation. And we call that, and I don't want, you know, I think they were a great generation. I don't know, there's always a great generation. But a generation who went out and fought World War II, brought peace to the world, and they came back and things changed in America for the good. I mean, we had the civil rights after all of this. That was part of a generation that was a great generation. And then another generation comes on. So you think, I'm going back into history and thinking about the 60s and 70s. That generation comes along, and the reality is this generation doesn't look like this great generation. But that generation, whether we think they're great or not, did some things that were great. They started the computer generation, whether you like it or not. Everything you enjoy in terms of technology, Silicon Valley generation started that. Then another generation comes on. You got the Facebook generation. That's my generation. That's the generation that started. I remember in college when UNC got Facebook, they were like the 4th or 5th campus that was invited to be a part of it. We thought this would be great. We can meet other people. And then adults got on it and ruined everything. But just imagine, you know, every generation, the next generation just doesn't live up to our... I heard my wife talking about the generation coming to work. I mean, we're not that old. I didn't think so. But she's talking about the generation coming in now that don't want to work.
Well, it's true.
It's true. It's true. Believe me, it's true. But why haven't they? Well, they've had helicopter parents that didn't make them work.
That's right.
So you got to retrain them. But just think, that generation is going to have another generation they're going to think just as bad about. But we always are taking one generation and handing the world over to them. And the question is, what will they do with it? And they're never going to do exactly what we did with it. And this is the reality that Koheleth is writing thousands of years ago. Will they be wise or foolish? Well, guess what? You don't get any say. And that becomes a problem, in that we can't, after our death, continue to run the world the way we want to. We try to put stipulations on it, but it doesn't mean it's going to work. You know, I think about families that somebody passes away and their children take all they have and fight over it. That's not the intention of those parents that have worked all those years to build something for their family, to have their children what? Fight over it. But it happens.
Or throw it away.
Or throw it away.
Or spend it foolishly.
Yeah. And then there's the younger generation that looks to the older generation and says, I don't want all that. You know, I'm looking at my parents' generation, not my parents, but my parents' generation, who built bigger houses. I mean, even the church, we built a big church, and we leave it to another generation. Well, I don't need all that space. What am I going to do with it? Can I afford to keep it up? I don't make what my parents' generation makes. You know, there's all of that happens. You know, so there's just all these things that Koheleth is saying that happened in his generation is happening even today. So what good is all of this? Verse 24, there is nothing better for mortals than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in their toil. For apart from him who, this is also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he gives the work of gathering and heaping, only to give one who pleases God. This is also like a puff of breath and chasing after wind. So what good is all of it? Well, here's the thing. If you can't find joy in what you do, then you're chasing after something that it'll never complete you. So at the end of the day, find enjoyment in the moment. In the things that come to you that are there, not the things you never will obtain. It could be a good meal. It could be spending time with your family. It could be the simple relaxation of a summer afternoon. Enjoy that moment, because it too is fleeting. So when you get good moments, they come from God, he's saying. Enjoy them. Don't pass them by. Don't wait for something better to come along. You know, I love food. Probably too much. But when I eat a meal, if it's a good meal, I enjoy it. And I think to myself, this might be it. Why wouldn't I enjoy it? I mean, if you think, you don't want to overeat. There's moderation, and Koheleth will talk about moderation. But don't just pass by it thinking that the next one, if I get a bologna sandwich, that's the best darn bologna sandwich I've ever had. I love it. I love this bologna sandwich. It's better than the one I had before. I might never get a bologna sandwich again. I'm going to enjoy that bologna sandwich. If I get time with my daughter, and this is hard because life gets busy and you forget, if I get time with her, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm not going to just remember when she was a little baby and sweet and kind. She's 8 now. She thinks she's a tween. I said, you're not a tween. That doesn't even exist. That's a made-up word. I'll tell her that. I'm like, that's not even real. She's like, I'm getting big. I said, I know you are, but you're still 8. You're little. I was like, you can't drive, you can't buy anything unless I give you some money. You're not that big. But I want to enjoy her for her. I don't want to enjoy her for who she was or who she'll be later on. That's sometimes we do. I'll enjoy that person when they do X, Y, Z. When they when they quit being juvenile or they mature. We even have adult family like that, don't we? If they'd only get their life straightened out, then we could enjoy them. They may never get their life straightened out. Can you enjoy them for who they are? That's hard. So Ecclesiastes 3 is one of those passages, and we won't get through all of Ecclesiastes, but this is kind of if we had to say, what does life look like in general for everybody? We go back to chapter 1 and we saw kind of the cosmology of, the earth spins, the waters move, the air moves, and generation after generation kind of comes into this constant cycle that happens. Well, what does that brief puff of breath look like? For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. So this is the spectrum of all of life. You're born and you die. So far, other than, even Jesus died. But everybody is born. I don't think anybody has come into the world yet that we know of. Now with science, there's some kooky stuff going on. But everybody has been born. They've gone through the same process. How they got there might be different, but they've all come out the same way. And at the end of the day, you may be buried differently, but when you're dead, you're dead. You don't get back up and go to work the next day. So in this spectrum of life, these are the things that happen. There's times in life that you plant things. And that can be physical or metaphorical. There's times that we plant literal things. There's seasonal things, harvest. There's time to pluck it up. So that season of planting and harvest. But there's things we plant in our lives. We plant seeds in people. Seeds of love and care. There's also bad seeds we may put in people. Seeds of disharmony or seeds of suspicion. And all of those things eventually grow and they come out. There's a time to kill and a time to heal. In the ancient world, war was always seasonal. It was kind of like this common understanding, nobody needs to go to war when it's harvest time. Because both sides need to what? They need to eat and gather. So if you're going to go to war, you plant, it didn't always happen that way. There's some really bad people out there that go and burn your crops and starve you to death. But normally, if your soldiers are farmers too, they're not really wanting to go out and... So there were seasons that you went out and have war. But there's also seasons that you had to heal. In our own lives, there are seasons where maybe we don't physically kill people, but there's seasons where we get really mad at them. But there's seasons we have to what? We have to heal from that. But there's never a constant. This is part of what Kohelet is saying. In all of history, all of life, war is never, it seems constant. But there's always ups and downs. It's never always 100%. Now, if you're living in the midst of it, it feels like this is way real. If we lived in Ukraine right now, it would be hard to remember what it was like before. But there will be a day at some point where there will be some sort of measure of stability. It's never always. Now we know globally that there's always somebody fighting. But in the ancient world, you only knew of your reality, your space around you. And it was never always 100%. There's a time to mourn, and a time to weep, and a time to laugh. Oh, I skipped a few, didn't I? A time to break down and a time to build up. When we think about a society that was always, before the kingship, was a tribal society. There were seasons where you broke down camp, and there was a season when you picked camp back up, and you set down camp. But even in our own lives, there's times that we have to break down things. And there's times when we build them back up. You know, it's part of that seasonal thing. There's a time to weep and a time to dance. Life is never all weeping. But life is never all dancing either, is it? It's a mixture. There's a time to mourn. Weeping and laughing, a time to mourn and a time to dance. When we think about those two, one is the imagery of a funeral, and the other one is an imagery of a wedding. You know, when we think about it, sometimes, you know, we may go to a wedding one week and a funeral the same week. Y'all ever had that happen? My grandfather passed away right before our wedding. We did his funeral on the day we did our rehearsal dinner. I mean, just the reality of life back to back. And that's the way life is sometimes. You know, it is both and. It's never just one. Now, sometimes if you're overly pessimistic, you can't ever really see the rest. But for most of us, we have to see that there are bad times and good times. There's a time to throw away stones and a time to gather the stones. Now, what does that mean? Well, this is a euphemism for having babies. You cast your stone and you gather stone. So there's a time of making love, and there's a time that you're not going to anymore because what? A baby's come along. There's a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Y'all have all been in relationships. You know that's true. A time to seek and a time to lose. Life's never all gain, but it's never all loss either, is it? A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. Some people need to learn that, don't they? On both sides. There are some people that need to speak up. Y'all been in those rooms. But there are some people that need to learn to be quiet. You know, if only people in media and politics could learn that lesson on both sides of the aisle. A time to love and a time to hate. And sometimes it's with the same person. A time for war and a time for peace. But if we look at it, life is lived in all of those extremes. None of our lives have been on one side and not the other. How many of you have never enjoyed a celebration? I'm a party pooper and I still like them. That's what Lily says. Lily, Daddy, you just stand over in the corner all the time. I was like, but I enjoy watching it. I don't have to be a part of it not to enjoy it. What gain have a worker from their toil? I have seen the business that God has given to everyone to be busy. He has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, He has put a sense of past and future in their minds, yet they cannot find out what God has done from beginning to end. So as we're not going to go through all of Ecclesiastes. I hope you will go through and read it. It's not a very long book. But I want you to think about, even in our limitation, we can't know all of what God is doing, has done, will do. In reality, all we can see is through our small, vantage point. So sometimes we'll ask questions, why, Lord? Why did this have to happen? Why did that have to happen? Why did it happen this way? And the reality is we only have a small vantage point to which to see through. And maybe we don't get those answers. Let's kind of skip through a little bit here, and I want to just kind of, let's see. There's so many wonderful things. You'll see, if you read through it, you'll see that Ecclesiastes will talk about some of the social issues of their day, which are some of the same social issues we have. You'll hear about the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. You'll hear about those that have power using it for their own selfish gain, and those on the bottom are the ones that suffer through it. And the questions will go, what good is this? Well, the reality is, over and over again, you'll hear, enjoy life when you can. We get towards the end of it, and verse chapter 12, we'll just read chapter 12 as kind of the conclusion. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come, and the years draw near when you will say, I have no pleasure in them. So think about, the older you get, the harder it is to what? Yeah, life's harder. I mean, you can't get up and go like you used to. You know.
Feel like you're bothered.
Yeah. Things don't, I mean, I remember my grandfather, the older he got, the less he could taste. So all he did was put Texas Pete on everything. I mean, literally, everything he ate to be able to taste something, he would just put Texas Pete on it. He couldn't, I mean, the food he used to enjoy, he couldn't enjoy. If he could taste it, he overindulged in sugar to be able to get that, and he was diabetic, so that was not good. But I mean, but it's true, the older we get, the harder it is to enjoy the things we used to enjoy. We say we have no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moons and the stars are darkened and the clouds return with rain, in the day when the guards of the house tremble and the strong men are bent, and the women who grind cease working because they are few, and those who look through the windows see dimly, when the doors on the street are shut and the sound of grinding is low, and one rises up at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of song are brought low, when one is afraid of the heights and the terrors in the road, the almond trees blossom, the grasshopper drags itself along, and desires fail, because all must go to their eternal home. And the mourners will go about the streets before the silver cord is snapped, and the golden bowl is broken, and the pitcher is broken at the fountain, and the wheel broken at the cistern. And the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the breath returns to God who gave it. A puff of breath, says the teacher. All is but a puff of breath. The reality is, enjoy it while it lasts. Because for every person and for every one of us, it will fade. So when we have opportunities, and you've all done it because I've heard you say it, and I've begun to say it to younger folks, enjoy it. Enjoy your youth. You don't overindulge, but enjoy it. Enjoy, I look at people and say, go do that. That is something that you won't be able to do when you get older. If you're able to go take that trip, take it. One day you'll have children and a family, and you won't be able to go do those things. Not that the other thing is less than, but you won't be able to do it. When you have children, enjoy them while they're small. Because they grow up very quickly. When your health is good, enjoy your health is good. Because one day, guess what? As a minister, there are times that I'll go and visit somebody at the hospital or hospice house, and there's a lot of pain and sorrow in that room. And I can leave and go home, and I'll say to myself, enjoy your day, because one day you or somebody you love is going to be there, and you'll be in that situation. But sometimes it's very easy for us as ministry to get stuck in somebody else's pain. It's okay to be there with them, but don't carry it with you, because guess what? One day you'll have to carry it yourself. And hopefully somebody will come visit me. But these are these are things that, a lot of times we don't talk about with our families and our church and different things. Besides being wise, the teacher also taught the people knowledge, weighing and studying and arranging many proverbs. And the sayings of this wise are like goads, and like nails firmly fixed on collected sayings that are given by one shepherd. Of anything beyond these, my child, be aware. Of making many books, there is no end, and much study is weariness of the flesh. I mean, think about going to the bookstore or the library, and think about, you could go to a bookstore and see 100 books on parenting. You could go to the bookstore and see 100 books on cooking. You could go to a bookstore and see 100 books on any topic you can think of. Are there any perfect parents? Is there any one meal that lasts forever? No. Doesn't matter how many times somebody's always going to say there's a better way to do it. So with all of this, what can we do? The end of the matter has all been heard. At the end of the day, fear God, not necessarily in an afraid sense, but in a worshipful sense. Worship God, keep His commandments. The basis of all of life is to love God with all you are, to love your neighbor as yourself. For this is the whole duty of everyone, for God will bring every deed into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. So at the end of the day, live a good life. A life that loves God, loves others. But also, when you have opportunities to enjoy it. There's a lot of people that just don't seem to like to enjoy life. You ever met anybody that just had a deep sense of either because they can never get enough, or there's just this other sense of maybe because life just has disappointed them for one reason or another, they just can't seem to enjoy it. At the end of life, I've never been into a room, and I've been in a lot of rooms, that somebody has said, I wish I had worked more. Or somebody in the room that wants to talk about politics. There's nobody on their deathbed that really talks about politics. As important as we think that it is, at the end of the day, it's not going to be the thing that you're going to want to talk about. There's nobody on their deathbed that necessarily talks about all the trips they took or didn't take. You know what they talk about? Their family and God. Those are the two things. Sometimes they're the things they've done that they've really enjoyed, like working in church or volunteering. But it's usually God and their family. Those are the two things people talk about on their deathbed. And I've never heard anybody, now they'll say, I wish I'd have spent more time with my family. Or, well, I wish I would have worshiped more or gone to church more. But the other things we take so important in life, that we cause such a stir and riffle about in our lives, that's not what you're going to think about on those last moments. So Koheleth gives us an awareness is some of the things we put too much time and energy in. If we look at the long scheme of history, a lot of those things will take care of themselves. When we think about people, whether they're in the media or just individuals that put stuff out there, thinking this is the most important thing. Even on Facebook, if I put this thing on Facebook, it's going to make everything a bit of difference. On your deathbed, nobody's going to care what they put on Facebook. I've been in rooms where there is nobody with somebody. They're miserable. And the reason they're miserable is they've put something above their family or above anything else. And that was the thing they chased after. They never held it long enough to keep it, but it did not bring them joy at the end. They were afraid to die. But the people that have loved well, they're ready to go. They have peace in their life because they've enjoyed life, but they've invested in the right things. And a book like Kohelet, sometimes we need to sometimes go back to just as a reminder that we shouldn't take everything always so serious. You know, whether it's something that happens at church or happens in the world or in our relationships. You know, some of the fights we want to fight or the fights that get picked, they're not that important. They may seem important at the moment, but nobody's going to remember it after you're gone. You're the one carrying it with you to your death. Nobody else will.
I can't remember it enough longer.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's just letting go of stuff that it's just burdensome. Jesus talks about that. You know, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden. I will give you rest." Jesus says, just lay it down and pick up what is best. Love God, love one another as yourself. So as we end today as kind of a break from our marking study, I hope that you'll go out. And although it can be hard to grapple with the awareness that 2 generations from now, nobody's going to remember much about you, unless you do something really great before then or really bad. But take peace in knowing that you can enjoy life. Get permission. Sometimes we don't give ourselves permission. Sometimes, you know, in the moments we get to rest, we think, well, we could do more. But guess what? God rested. God said that it was good enough. Sometimes we got to say, this is good enough. Celebrate what we've done. But enjoy moments that you get, because it might not be the next one. Let me close this in prayer, and I'll stop our video if y'all have any comments or thoughts. Gracious God, we thank you. We thank you sometimes that each of us, no matter who we are, need a little bit of a reality check. We need to be humbled. And sometimes that is coming and saying, what are our priorities? And what are our motivations for life? Lord, no matter how young we are, old we are, we always chase after some things that aren't as important as we think they are. Help us, Lord, from time to time to refocus on the most central and important things. The first being you. You who are our Creator and our Sustainer and our Savior. And second, the people that you've put in our lives, whether they be our family or our friends or our church community or the community around us. And Lord, help us as we take each and every breath, knowing that you're with us as we do, but that each breath that we have is a gift from you. And God, as a gift, you don't want us to squander it, to be miserable in it, but to find joy in the life that you have created. And the joy we find, if we're truly honest, is when we enjoy you and others. Help us to do that more often. And Lord, help us not to take things so serious at times. There are things to take serious. But probably 75% of it in our lives isn't as serious as we think. Lord, we love you and we thank you for all that you do for us, in us, and through us. Bring us back together as we study next week. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.